Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. This channel is dedicated to me learning about different things from around the world and mostly about things and cultures and countries that I would like to visit in the future. So yeah, right now I'm dedicating my reactions to learning more about countries that I would like to visit someday, and therefore I'm watching some videos from Geography Now, some of the countries that I would like to visit, but also some of the videos that I haven't seen from that channel. So right now I'm going to jump into Geography Now, Australia. Let's do it.
All right, everybody, let's just all get it off of our chests. Koalas and kangaroos, boomerangs, didgeridoo, Sydney, Melbourne, Uluru, crocodiles, cockatoos, everything that will kill you, shrimp on Barbies, that's not true, that Vegemite stuff that tastes like poo, coral reefs and platypuses, platypi, what's the plural of platypus? All right, now let's actually learn about the freaking country.
It's time to learn geography now!
Hey everybody, I'm your host Paul Barbado. Today's gonna be Australia.
Paul Barbado, oh my god.
Like
This is really okay. Yeah, so this channel is going alphabetically. So Australia is way back in the very beginning. So this is apparently before he got his nickname. But yeah, we all know you as Bobby. Come on. So
flag. The Australian flag has a blue field with a Union Jack on the upper hoist corner to represent that it was a former colony and a current Commonwealth of the United Kingdom, with a large star under it representing the Commonwealth.
It's one of the more prettier flags of the world, I would say, because I like the flags that has the Union Jack in the corner, to show that it's a Commonwealth country. But especially Australia's flag and New Zealand's flag, I really like those two because they have the Southern Cross and the Southern Cross star constellation. So yeah, I like it.
And the 5 stars on the right, the Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, Crucis, to the right representing the Southern Cross constellation. All right, that was fun. Exactly. Now let's discuss about the borders. Now, obviously, as an island nation, or rather large one, but still an island, Australia doesn't have any borders with any other nations, but that doesn't mean that Australia doesn't have some rather intriguing parameters. The country divides itself up in...
Wait a minute, they don't have borders, they don't have land borders with any other nation, but they do have sea borders. So yeah.
Rather intriguing way. Like the US, Australia has states, not provinces.
Yeah.
There is a difference. 6 of them, and each one kind of has their own little flair and quirks, like Tasmania, known for being crazy. Where things get a little interesting, though, are the territories. Australia has 3 domestic internal territories and 6 overseas territories. Technically 7 if you include the Australian Antarctic territory, even though the Antarctic Treaty kind of banned anybody from claiming Antarctic soil as their own.
No one can own
that a lot of
anything there.
Do a wonderful job at ignoring. The 3 internal territories.
No one can own anything or territory in Antarctica, but a lot of countries just ignore it. I don't know why the UN hasn't banned it or something. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's a complicated mess.
Are Northern Territory, Capital Territory, which is basically just the capital city of Canberra and some extra space around it, and the
What? It's not Canberra, it's Canberra.
Little Tyke Jervis Bay territory. Jervis Bay was bought and developed to give the inland capital Canberra access to the sea, and eventually Jervis Bay split from the capital. However, it's still counted
The way
as
he
part of the capital.
pronounces
In
the
elections,
capital,
it's
oh my god.
confusing. Even though it really doesn't have much going for it, except for a small navy base and beaches that it kind of took from other neighboring towns. The most dramatic border area, though, would have to be the middle of Australia. For years, this slab of land didn't exactly quite know how to distinguish itself and has gone through 4 transitions in the past century. First, it was
Really?
all South Australia,
Yeah.
which didn't quite make sense because parts of it touched the northern parts of Australia, so it split into 2, 1 state and 1 territory.
Exactly.
Then for 4 years, it became South Australia and 2 territories, the new one being called Central Australian Territory, then finally it changed its mind and went back to being Northern Territory. Central Australia is kind
Wait,
of like
why
your
didn't
girlfriend at a
they,
restaurant. What do you want?
Why didn't they keep Central Australian Territory? Yeah. Let me know down in the comments if you know that. Or maybe, I think, okay, maybe in the future I'm going to watch more specific videos about Australia. I would like to see if I can find a video that tells me, an overall or an overview history of Australia. If I find one, I'm going to react to it in the future.
Want? What do you want?
Okay.
It's not that
Wait. I'm just going to go back. Yeah.
its mind and went back to being Northern Territory. Central
Okay.
Australia is kind of like your girlfriend at a restaurant. What do you want? What do you want? It's not that simple! Finally, we reach the overseas territories. Although Australia has over 8,000 islands under its sovereignty, 6 of these islands operate as distinct territories, some of which sustain themselves with permanent populations. They are Ashmore and Cartier, the Cocos or Keelings Islands, Coral Sea Islands, the Heard and McDonald Islands, and the popular holiday spot, Norfolk Island,
Yeah,
and the pleasant
Norfolk
Christmas
Island, I've
Island
heard.
that gets
I've heard
attacked by
about.
huge coconut crabs every year. Finally, Australia is home to arguably the most micronations in the world. Places like the Principality of Wye, Rainbow Creek, the Empire of Atlantium, and more. These nations were developed by either small groups of people or a single person because they were doing things like protesting taxes and wanted to claim autonomy, or they were just kind of bored and decided to amuse themselves. But still, hey, they tried. All right, now let's talk about the landscape, shall we? Okay, not all of Australia is a desert, okay? Only about 35%. Okay, so besides Antarctica, Australia is the driest continent on the planet.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
explains
I
why
think.
yes, 85% of the population lives along the
Oh
edges
yeah,
of the
yeah,
country.
yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say. Most of the population lives on the outskirts of coastal areas of Australia. Yeah, I've heard that before. So yeah, but 85%, okay, that's significant amount.
5% of the population lives along the edges of the country within 50 kilometers of the coast. Nonetheless, a lot of places, specifically around the coasts, actually have very temperate and even tropical landscapes. By the north, you find tropical zones and wetlands and rainforests. By the far edges on the east and west, you can find subtropical zones with lighter forests and plains. A little bit inland, close to the interior, you find grasslands and flat stretches of semi-arid terrain. In the southeast by Sydney, you find temperate, cooler, arid land with semi-tropical, yet slightly dry areas with an abundance of trees and plants. Then of course you have Tasmania, which is on a completely different level
exactly.
of green. Then we reach the deep interior where we hit the great deserts like the Great Victoria and the Great Sandy Deserts. This area is famously known as the Outback. The Outback is essentially the area of Australia.
That is one of those things where when I think of Australia, I think, I get this image of the outback, of the red soil. That's so ingrained in my memory and imagination, or my view of Australia is this red soil outback sort of thing. Australia is one of those countries that I really, really like to visit one day. It is on my bin list, on my bucket list. Because again, as I said in my previous video, but I'm going to say again, I'm a person that is very fascinated about history. I'm very interested in history, and Australia is one of those countries that has a very, very unique, distinct cultural history. And that is why I want to go to Australia and visit all of these cultural, historical places. Especially because I'm also very interested in colonial history of the world, and Australia is one of those unique old colonies where I would like to visit some of the places where people first settled from Europe. That would be really awesome to see someday. I would really like to see that someday. So yeah, I'm just a nerd. I'm just a history nerd at heart.
With long open stretches of red and orange desert that lays out beyond the horizon, with few sparse populations of people that can be found anywhere. It has a dry, rocky, rugged terrain that everybody assumes is teeming with a variety of poisonous insects and reptiles, and, well, I mean, it kind of is, but still,
Yeah,
there's more to it
exactly.
than just that. Oh, and don't forget Lake Hillier, that strange lake that is mysteriously naturally pink for some
Oh,
strange
yeah.
reason that baffles scientists.
Yeah, I've heard
There's
about
one
that.
thing that really epitomizes Australia, it would have to be its world-renowned beaches and coasts. People flock from all over the world just to enjoy the beautiful, pristine atmosphere of a real, authentic Australian beach. Just remember to put on your sunscreen, though. Australians actually kind of have a joke where they can tell who the ignorant tourists are. It's usually the ones who think they'll be totally fine sitting out in the sun for more.
But also, I've heard that Australians are very prone to skin cancer. I don't know if they are more prone to skin cancer than other people around the world, but yeah, it's just something that I've heard. Maybe it's just one of those wrong facts, but yeah. Leave me a comment if that's something that you know, but also just leave me a comment in general if you would like to just say something. Maybe you've been to Australia before and can recommend me some places to visit.
Than 20 minutes. Skin cancer rates are actually exceptionally high in Australia, and the population has acknowledged the precautions that they need to take. Now, we all know that Australia is home to some of the most unique and curiously distinct animal species in the world, not found anywhere else. However, Australia is also known as the home of many feral species. Australia has over 50 invasive species that were brought over to the land from areas mostly in Europe.
The rabbits
over the course of nearly 1.5
are a
centuries,
plague
have bred
in Australia.
like wildfire all over the country. Animals like the European rabbit, red fox, water buffaloes, goats, pigs, even camels, and worst of all, the famous cane toad. They've all gone wild and have cost
the toads are also a really big plague.
Yeah, I don't really know how to transition into the demographics from this part, so here's demographics. Today, Australia has a population.
It's so weird to see these very older or very early videos from this channel, because I know how they make videos today, and the style is so different. I mean, you can still see the humor and the the way that he talks and presents things, but yeah, it's fun to see these early videos.
Population of about 23 million people. Now, to many outsiders, Australia is kind of known as the place where the British sent their prisoners. First of all, that's rude. Second of all, that's only kind of half true. Yes, during the early years of Australia's colonization from the UK, droves of convicts were sent to penal colonies in Botany Bay.
Exactly. It was called transportation. It was actually a means of sentencing or punishment for British people, British convicts. You could be sentenced to what they call transportation, which was literally to be transported from Britain to Australia. At least Australia after the independence of of the colonies in North America, because before the American independence, they were transported to North America instead. But after they sort of went their own way in the colonies in America, then they needed to send the prisoners somewhere else. So they went to Australia and New Zealand, but I think mostly Australia, yeah.
Sydney, over 165,000 convicts, about 25,000
Yeah.
of which were women, were sent over the course of 80 years. Although the British weren't the first ones to discover Australia, it was actually the Dutch. As they came, they named the land New Holland and the
Yeah.
adjacent island next door, New Zealand, after the province of Zeeland in the
Yeah.
Netherlands. However,
Yes,
as
yes,
we
yes, yes.
discovered-
I knew that. I knew that's why it's called New Zealand, because it's, yeah, I knew that.
The Dutch were really good at discovering places, but kind of not so good at colonizing and maintaining those places for themselves. However, most
Yeah.
of Australia's population came from natural colonization from British non-convict nationals. Some would argue
Yeah.
that Australia was kind of like the UK's version of Operation.
It's also it's only I as far as I know, it's only a very small percentage of the population today that are descendant from convicts, because there was a very large influx of regular colonists that just moved to Australia or the new territory, just to settle there, some were seeking riches and gold and stuff like that, but also some were just seeking a new life for themselves. So yeah, only a very small percentage of Australians have roots back to the convict fleets. So yeah.
Backup plan in case of America goes crazy. After the American Revolution, the UK tried to compensate for lost colonies by re-establishing new ones, and Australia was hot on the list.
Oh,
About
yeah,
85% of the population
That's what
is
I said before.
European. Asians make up the next largest minority of about 12%, mostly coming from China and India and other Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam and the Philippines. And by the way, yes, Australia does have black people, not many, but before the Federation began, Africans, mostly from sub-Saharan countries like South Africa, Mauritius, Zimbabwe, and Sudan, have historically resided in Australia. It wasn't until the 60s when African assistance programs allowed many Africans to study and eventually move to Australia. Today, they make up about 1% of the population. One demographic of people that commonly gets overlooked, though, would have to be the native Australians, commonly known as the Aborigines, which make up about 3% of the population. Aborigines are a very unique and distinct people group that come from hundreds of different tribes, each with their own language and dialect, spread throughout the north, south, and central regions. Today, Aboriginal rights are a huge hot-button topic.
They are one of the oldest people groups in the world, the Aborigines, in Australia. It was discovered a few years back with a huge international gene program where some lead scientists had discovered that the Australian Aborigines were in fact among one of the first peoples that can trace their lineage back to Africa. It was one of the first groups that left Africa and migrated to what is today Australia. Those people who migrated all those millennia ago, those people, their descendants are the Aborigines in Australia. So yeah, so that's why the Aboriginal culture is one of the oldest surviving cultures in the world today.
in Australian legislation, and about 22% of the land of Northern Australia is Aboriginal owned. In 2013, Aboriginal groups actually banded together and decided to kind of make their own little state called the Murawari Republic, independent from Australia. The Australian government, though, doesn't really recognize this claim and just kind of brushes it off with a meh, as long as you don't cause a civil war attitude. Well, as you can see, a lot of people have come to live in Australia, but now let's see how Australia interacts with the rest of the world.
Friends.
Australia is, let's just put it very simply, a very popular country. If this was high school, Australia would be on the top of the social ladder, hands down.
Yeah,
everybody knows
exactly.
something about Australia.
I'm going to visit
friends,
someday.
Australia not only goes for the
I
cool
am
kids,
going
but
to
also the
visit someday.
strategic ones. Of course, Australia gets along with many of its Asian neighbor nations, specifically China and India, as large numbers of people from those nations live in Australia, and they do great business with them as well. Australia gets along pretty well with the islands of Oceania, except Fiji. In 2006, Australia refused to back up a military coup that overthrew the government in Fiji, and since then, things have been a little weird between the two countries. In terms of their best friends, though, of course, New Zealand would have to rank in the top level, and they are basically like siblings that share very similar culture, language, and histories as former colonies, whereas the UK also has a high priority on Australia's entourage as they make...
Australia and New Zealand might be the top 2 countries in the world that I would like to visit before I die. I'm so fascinated by both of those countries because they are so rich in history and culture. So yeah.
Up the largest demographic of people ethnically and as migrants in the country. But finally, we reach the USA. The USA and Australia kind of have a little crush on each other. Australia is always there to back up the US in times when allies are necessary, and the US, well, I mean, we Americans, we just love Australians. We love their accents, we love their culture, we love their accents, we love their spunky Australian attitude, and we love their sexy, sexy accents. Almost any Australian that comes to the US is immediately loved and welcome, even if they are slightly sociopathic. One sentence with that accent and we are smitten. We love you, Australia. In conclusion, Australia is just, everybody loves Australia.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
It's a fantastic
Australia
place.
is coming up next.
Yeah, that's it. That was Geography Now, Australia. There were a few bits here and there that I knew, but in general, a very interesting, fun video. As I said, maybe, or I will try to find a more in-depth video about Australia, maybe an overview history of Australia that I'm going to react to on this channel, because I would like to find more videos about these countries that I want to visit in the future. Also about Canada that I've already reacted to with Geography Now, but to as a whole, I think I'm going to watch all the Geography Now country videos that I haven't watched yet. And then after that, I'm going to see if I can find other kinds of videos that gives me more information about these countries. So yeah, this was my reaction to Geography Now Australia. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.